In the middle of the Siberian wilderness, there is a hole in the ground that locals refuse to go near. They call it the gateway to hell. Every single year it grows 30 meters larger. Scientists use a different term. They call it a megaslump. But here is what neither name tells you. This thing cannot be stopped. And what is coming out of it may be worse than what is going in. This is the Batagaika Crater. If you think it is just a random sinkhole in Russia, you are dead wrong. What is happening here is happening wherever permafrost exists. And the timeline, it has already started. Right now, as you are watching this, the walls of the crater are collapsing. Ancient ice that has been frozen for 200,000 years is melting, and with it, something is waking up. The ground we walk on is not as solid as we think. Batagaika is proof. From above, it looks like something tore through the earth, a massive gash carved into the frozen ground of northeastern Siberia. It is over 1 kilometer long. That is more than half a mile of exposed permafrost, just sitting there, collapsing in on itself. The locals who live nearby will not go near it after dark. They say you can hear it, the sound of the earth cracking open. Some describe it as groaning, like the planet itself is in pain. The walls drop nearly 100 meters deep. That is about as tall as a 30-story building. Instead of concrete and steel, you are looking at layers of ice and frozen soil that have been locked in place since before modern humans even existed. And here is the thing, it is not done growing. The Batagaika Crater has been expanding since the 1960s, but it did not begin with some massive earthquake or meteor strike. No, it started because someone cut down a forest. Deforestation. Trees were cleared, and the ground that had been shaded for thousands of years suddenly got exposed to direct sunlight. The permafrost beneath started to warm, and once that process began, there was no stopping it. Permafrost isn't just frozen dirt. It's soil that's been locked at or below freezing for millennia. The ice in that soil is what holds everything together. It's like the glue that keeps the landscape stable. But when the ice melts, that glue disappears. The ground loses its structure, and it collapses. Every summer, when temperatures rise, the exposed walls absorb more heat, more ice melts, more ground slumps inward. The crater doesn't just grow outward, it grows downward too, exposing deeper and older layers with every passing year. This isn't something that's going to stabilize. The more it grows, the more surface area gets exposed. The more surface area exposed, the faster it melts. It's a feedback loop that feeds itself. And the locals? They've watched it swallow up land they used to hunt on. Now it's just a void, a scar on the landscape that refuses to heal. But here's where things get really unsettling. As the crater deepens, it's not just revealing ice, it's revealing history, 200,000 years of it. The walls of Batagaika are like a timeline carved into the earth. Each layer represents a different era, a different climate, a different world. Preserved forests that haven't seen sunlight in tens of thousands of years. Plant matter still intact from ecosystems that no longer exist. And then there are the bodies. In 2018, researchers pulled the carcass of a perfectly preserved foal out of the permafrost near Batagaika. It was over 40,000 years old. The skin, the hair, even the internal organs still there, frozen in time like it had just died yesterday. The permafrost here is full of ancient remains, woolly mammoths, extinct species of bison, cave lions. These aren't fossils. These are actual bodies, locked in ice, waiting to be uncovered. But there is a darker side to all of this, because it is not just dead animals coming out of the ice. When permafrost thaws, it releases gases that have been trapped for thousands of years. The big one? Methane. And if you know anything about greenhouse gases, you know methane is no joke. It is about 25 times more effective at trapping heat than carbon dioxide. As the walls of Batagaika collapse, Methane bubbles up from the ground. Researchers have filmed it. You can literally see gas escaping from the exposed permafrost. Some researchers have even lit it on fire with a match just to prove it is there. Batagaika is not unique. It is just the biggest example. Across the Arctic, from Siberia to Alaska to northern Canada, permafrost is thawing, and all of it is releasing methane. The more methane that gets released, the warmer the atmosphere gets. The warmer the atmosphere gets, the more permafrost thaws. It creates a feedback loop, and once it starts, it is almost impossible to stop. But wait, it gets worse. In 2014, a team of French scientists made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. They were studying permafrost samples from Siberia when they found something unexpected. They found a virus, but not just any virus, a giant virus over 30,000 years old, locked in the ice. When they brought it back to the lab and exposed it to the right conditions, it came back to life. A virus that had been frozen for 30,000 years woke up. This particular virus only infects amoebas. It is harmless to humans. But here is the problem. It proved that ancient pathogens can survive in permafrost. And if they can survive, they can be released when the ice melts. Scientists have started calling them zombie viruses. These are microbes and viruses that evolved in a completely different world, alongside animals and humans that no longer exist. We have no immunity to them. We have no idea what they are capable of. Researchers have found bacteria in Siberian permafrost that are resistant to modern antibiotics. They have found viruses that have never been cataloged before. Every year, as more permafrost thaws, more of these ancient microbes are released. And Batagaika is exposing permafrost that is deeper and older than almost anywhere else on Earth. The deeper you go, the further back in time you are reaching. That means the pathogens locked in those layers are even more ancient, even more unknown. So when locals say the crater is a gateway to hell, maybe they are not that far off. Because what is coming out of that ice is not just methane and mammoth bones. It is the past. And the past does not always stay buried. Can this thing be stopped? Short answer, no. Once permafrost starts to thaw on this scale, there is no reversing it. You cannot just refreeze it. Even if global temperatures somehow stabilize tomorrow, the damage is done. The exposed walls of Batagaika are already absorbing heat. The feedback loop is already running. Some scientists have proposed geoengineering solutions, covering the exposed permafrost with reflective materials, pumping in coolants to artificially refreeze the ground. But the logistics are insane. This crater is in one of the most remote regions on Earth. There are no roads, no infrastructure, and even if you manage to stabilize Batagaika, that does not solve the bigger problem. Batagaika is not alone. Across the Arctic, there are thousands of smaller thermokarst features forming. Craters, sinkholes, lakes that appear overnight as the ground collapses. In Alaska, researchers have documented permafrost thaw that is happening 70 years ahead of schedule. In Siberia, entire buildings are sinking as the permafrost beneath them melts. Roads are buckling, pipelines are cracking. The infrastructure that was built on what people thought was solid ground is failing. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. Temperatures that used to stay below freezing for most of the year are now spiking into the double digits in summer. And here's the kicker. Permafrost covers about a quarter of the northern hemisphere's land surface. That is roughly 9 million square miles. And most of it is starting to thaw. Estimates suggest that permafrost contains about twice as much carbon as the entire atmosphere. Twice. When the permafrost thaws, all of that organic matter starts to decompose. And as it decomposes, it releases carbon dioxide and methane. If even a fraction of that carbon gets released, we are looking at a climate feedback loop on a scale we have never dealt with before. So when you look at Batagaika, you are not just looking at a hole in the ground. You are looking at a preview, a window into what is coming for the rest of the Arctic. Geologists call them irreversible thresholds. The term refers to points in a system where, once crossed, you cannot go back. The damage is permanent. Batagaika has crossed that threshold. The permafrost there has reached a state called talik, a layer of permanently unfrozen ground. Once talik forms, the permafrost above it becomes unstable and continues to thaw even if temperatures drop. The system has fundamentally changed, and it will not change back. Scientists have used ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery to track its growth. The data is consistent. Every year, without fail, the crater expands, and the rate of expansion is increasing. In the 1990s, it was growing about 10 meters per year. By the 2010s, that rate had tripled. Now, in some sections, it is expanding more than 30 meters per year. That is faster than the rate at which most glaciers retreat. This is one of the most rapidly changing geological features on the planet. And the depth? It is approaching 100 meters in some places. Some of the ice at the bottom has not seen daylight in over 600,000 years. That is older than modern humans. That ice froze when the world was a completely different place. And now it is melting. Batagaika is not just a Russian problem. It is a global one. The methane and carbon dioxide released from thawing permafrost do not just stay in Siberia. They enter the atmosphere and spread. They contribute to global warming, and global warming accelerates permafrost thaw. It is a planetary feedback loop. In Alaska, indigenous villages are being forced to relocate as the ground beneath them becomes unstable. In Russia, infrastructure failures are costing billions. In 2020, a fuel tank in Norilsk collapsed after the permafrost beneath it thawed. Over 20,000 tons of diesel fuel spilled into nearby rivers. It was one of the worst environmental disasters in Russian history. This is not theoretical. This is real-world damage happening right now. So here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud. We can't fix this. We can slow it down maybe. If global emissions get slashed, if temperatures stabilize, then maybe we can reduce the rate at which permafrost thaws. But Batagaika, it's not going to stop. The feedback loop is already running. The talik has already formed. The ice is already melting. And the things that are waking up in that ice, we can't put them back. The methane that's bubbling out of the ground, that's already in the atmosphere. The ancient bacteria and viruses, they're already out there. This is a one-way door, and we've already walked through it. The locals near Batagaika have a story. They say the crater wasn't always called the gateway to hell. Decades ago, it was just another part of the tundra, unremarkable, quiet. But as it opened up, as the ground started to collapse, people began to avoid it. They said the spirits of the earth were angry, that something had been disturbed that should have stayed buried. Modern science doesn't deal in spirits. It deals in data, in measurements. But sometimes, the folklore gets it right. Because when you stand at the edge of Batagaika and look down into that void, when you see the layers of ice and soil stacked like pages in a book, when you realize that this thing is growing every single day, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it, you start to understand why people might call it a gateway to hell. It's not a gateway in the supernatural sense. It's a gateway to a future we're not ready for. A future where the ground we thought was solid isn't, where the carbon we thought was locked away gets released, where ancient pathogens we thought were extinct come back to life. And that future is already here. Right now, the walls of the Batagaika Crater are collapsing. Ice that's been frozen since the last interglacial period is melting. Methane is bubbling up from the ground. Ancient organisms are being released, and it's not slowing down. This is the reality of a warming planet. The ground isn't stable. The systems we depend on aren't guaranteed. And the things we thought were locked away forever aren't staying buried. The Earth is unzipping itself, and Batagaika is the scar that refuses to heal. The question isn't whether this is coming to other parts of the Arctic. It already is. The question is how fast, and how much of the past we're willing to unleash before we do something about it. Because the Earth remembers, even if we don't. Subscribe to see more of the places where the planet is rewriting its own rules.